Indonesia, the magnificent archipelago, a chain of emeralds on the equator, home to one of the most diverse peoples, flora, and fauna on Earth. But as the country marches into the 21st century, undergoing technological, economic, and social transformation, the natural landscape is changing. Indonesia today is a focal point of growing environmental concern. The peatlands of Indonesia are under threat. Decades of deforestation, drainage, uncontrolled fires, and poorly advised agricultural projects have resulted in far-reaching environmental devastation, accelerated emissions of greenhouse gases, and the loss of great natural potentials. About 2/3 of the world's tropical peatlands are located in Indonesia. Most of them can be found in the subcoastal lowlands of Papua, Sumatra, and Kalimantan on the island of Borneo. Peatlands are murky and wet, spongy, waterlogged, stained black by tannins leaching from dead leaves and wood. Direct sunlight rarely ever touches the ground.
To me, a peatland is very important. Peatland is so specific. A lot of flower, a lot of fruits are only specific to the peatland. Peatland also the refugee of many species.
This is the home of the endangered Bornean orangutan, proboscis monkey, and other primates. It is a source of life for the local Dayak people. Peatland forests provide important ingredients for modern medicine.
We need to protect because we don't know yet the value of the biodiversity. For example, one fungus can be $1 billion values. If we do it rightly, they may have potential for medicine.
But the Indonesian peatlands are under serious threat.
Since early 1990s, Indonesia lost about 35 million hectares of forest. Though we still have about 65 million hectares of primary forest, including also peatland in a very good condition. That 60-something million hectares is in constant threat from people who would like to take the land where the forests grow for agriculture, infrastructures, houses, roads, and whatnot. With the increased population, there is an increased demand. And some parts of the forest are quite close to the big cities, close to the shore where we normally develop our economy.
Scientists understand that the impacts of peatland degradation put a heavy burden on the local area and on the global ecosystem.
Peatland deforestation and the degradation of the peat is a major source of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So in that sense, they have a health effect on the planet.
But what exactly is peatland degradation and where are the emissions coming from? This is a healthy peat swamp forest, and this is peat, a carbon storage. Peat consists of the remains of fallen trees, branches, leaves, and other plant matter that have been building up in waterlogged conditions for thousands of years, forming a peat dome. It rains a lot in the peat swamp forest. The forest cover and sponge-like nature of the peatland ensures that the peat remains saturated with water. These conditions bring the decomposition process to a halt, and so the carbon remains safely stored away. Until someone comes along with a saw, cuts down some trees, and digs a trench to flush the timber out of the forest. Water that was previously trapped in the peatland starts to flow out of the ditch. For the first time, large amounts of sunlight enter the forest. The temperature goes up. The peat near the ditch dries out. Oxygen enters the peat, and the peat begins to decompose. Solid carbon turns to carbon dioxide, traveling up and away. At this scale, the impacts are relatively small. The peatland forest will grow back and continue to trap vast amounts of carbon whilst providing important goods and services for local communities. It's when you go large scale that everything changes. Bulldozers and excavators cut through the forest. Large canals and trenches make way for timber transport and other products intended for planting in the future. Water flows out of the peatland. Sustained drainage causes the water table to go down. As a direct result, the peat dome starts to subside. The added elements of sunlight and oxygen cause the release of carbon dioxide. Seasonal peat fires further accelerate the process, sending vast amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. It's the dry season in central Kalimantan. The provincial capital city of Palangkaraya is thick with smoke. On a bad day, the building on the other side of the road is barely visible. Traffic vanishes in the gloom. Few venture out into the streets. The surrounding peatlands are burning.
The combustion is primarily what we call smoldering combustion. Smoldering combustion is dirty smoke. So there's a lot of chemical products of incomplete combustion, and because the burning rate is slow, those combustion products are basically trapped near the surface of the ground. Certainly it's not healthy. Frequently the concentrations exceed the recommended levels for outdoor activity. You would not want, for example, to have your children outside playing.
Anak-anak sering sakit-sakitan karena hirup asap, infeksi itu batuk sama sesak napas.
The fires usually drag out between the months of May and September. But with increasingly erratic weather behavior, can spark up almost any time of the year.
So the forest fires is a very complex issue. It involves social complexity, but also economic aspect into it. To clear the land, it's very expensive to rent mechanical equipment to do that. It's so much cheaper to clear the land using fires. And it could easily evolve into an uncontrollable fires in a dry season.
It is estimated that peat fires release between 4 and 40 times more greenhouse gases than normal forest fires. Even neighboring countries, such as Singapore, are affected. There are many driving forces behind peatland degradation.
One of the most controversial commodity in Indonesia is oil palm. It's regarded as one of the top commodities of Indonesia. We're one of the biggest producers of oil palm in the world. The industry is also portrayed as causing a lot of environmental concern. One of them is deforestation. We want them to move the expansion from forested land into degraded land, thus enabling the economic development in the local area, but also protecting the environment and reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Peatland degradation contributes to more than half of Indonesia's total greenhouse gas emissions. There are growing concerns about its contribution to the changing of Indonesia's weather patterns. But Indonesia is rising to the challenge.
I think it is beyond doubt that the most pressing issue today is the threat of climate change. Without being pushed into bigger action, we have initiated several initiatives to combat climate change, and it is well appreciated by the global community.
At the G20 summit meeting in September 2009, President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono announced Indonesia's commitment to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 26% based on its own initiative, and by an additional 15% if adequate international support were made available to the Indonesian government. All of this to be achieved by the year 2020.
Climate change is what we call as science-driven issues. Without scientific research, without efforts done by the senior researchers, we could not frame the issue as climate change. After we learn from the science, we need to translate that into policies. And that is a big challenge because normally policies are not made based on science.
In 2011, the U.S.-Indonesia Comprehensive Partnership established the Indonesia Climate Change Center, creating a mechanism for potential change.
There's two gaps. First, a gap in science. We realize the reality of climate change, but we don't understand what is the real impact at the practical level.
We give ICCC the task of trying to bridge the gap between science,
numbers and policy intentions. So intentions becomes real problems.
At ICCC, the peatland issue is top priority.
Peatland has contributed, together with the forest, is more than 80% of the emission profile. So meaning that tackling this issue is really a big contribution to the emission reduction.
The remote peatlands of Katingan are accessible only by boat. Here, ICCC collaborates with third parties to obtain data that will help formulate a more complete picture of peatland.
Ya, 1 meter. Kedalaman gambut yang di sini itu di area sini adalah 2 meter 30 cm. Kita akan analisis gambut ini kirim ke Bogor. Ya, Farsi. Gimana kabarnya? Jadi ini alat untuk pengukur tinggi muka air, baik di bawah gambut maupun di atas gambut. Jadi data ini setiap jam terlihat datanya oleh ICCC. Ini salah satu contoh gambut yang sudah kering. Dan ini sangat mudah sekali terbakar. Makanya kita untuk menahan agar ini selalu basah, itu semua kanal-kanal itu kita blocking, kita tabat. Kanal seperti ini adalah untuk mempermudah alur kayu keluar. Tapi masalahnya karena menguras air yang di gambut itu sehingga menjadi gambut itu cepat kering.
Kita menggunakan alat bernama EGM4. EGM4 ini merekord akumulasi karbon, soil temperature, soil humidity, dan juga flux karbon. Kemudian kita juga mengukur tidak hanya di lahan gambut yang terdegradasi, tapi kita juga mengukur di lahan gambut yang primer, di mana itu masih berupa hutan-hutan dan lahan gambut yang masih asli. Kalau misalnya kita mengetahui berapa akumulasi karbon yang dikeluarkan dari lahan gambut itu sendiri, kita bisa lakukan semacam kegiatan mitigasi atau adaptasi seberapa besar karbon yang bisa kita reduksi dari aktivitas yang ada di lahan gambut ini.
The roadmap is clear, but there is still a long way to go.
We hope that all scientific findings become a basis for policy decision. If all the policy is based on the science, so we hope we will have a better life.
So right now, research has to be done for biodiversity, for community, either impact mitigation, adaptation, for many others.
Primary forest and peatland, definitely the ideal solutions would be to preserve that. If you see a degraded land, it can be used for economic development, it can be used to be reforested, but the whole point is to look at the landscape and decide which land use is best for each land covers.
We're not going to move the yardsticks, as we would say, unless the people understand and are behind the change. It's that simple.
I hope that Indonesia realizes that this climate change is a challenge, a threat, as well as an opportunity. We all agree that the best way to do this is to work together. It affects everybody. It is not enough that we know everything about this, that we are smart people doing this. If not, millions of people do the same thing.
The consequences affect all layers of society in Indonesia and in the world. From environmental devastation to loss of species and economic potentials to potential driver of climate change, the peatland issue is calling for attention and care. How Indonesia manages this challenge will have a long-term effect on the quality of life of future generations.